My great-great-grandparents both came to Tulsa, Oklahoma in search of the promised land. Lula Williams and John Williams were one of the most successful entrepreneur families in all of Black Wall Street. When I was a kid, I remember my mom showed me the picture of my great-great-grandparents being the first Black people in Tulsa to own the car. And it was like I don't even know if they called it, I guess there were no convertibles. The top was down, so it looked dope. And it was them in the front, Dado still as a child in the back. And it just felt like this wow, moment of pride where I see my family and striving. It gets more vivid again when you read about it, how John went from the ice cream parlor to the mechanic shop and then got the car from there. Lula had a confectionery store and the Dreamland Theater. It feels like this sort of gradual blossoming of something beautiful in my family. Of course, I didn't know about the full horrors that happened and how we had this community and how a lot of it was taken during the Tulsa Race Massacre.
I was just 16. I was a junior in high school. It's something you'll never forget. I'll never forget. Well, all of us agreed that it started because of the threat through the Tribune that they were going to lynch a Negro tonight.
That was the first voice recording I ever heard of Dado, as we called him. It was crazy hearing about it from the perspective of Dado, my great-grandfather, that him and his father were one of the people actively protecting, shooting out of windows, and trying to just keep fragments of Greenwood alive. He was 16. I don't know if I would have been able to emotionally handle that, but he literally had to.
My grandfather was W.D. Williams. We called him Dado. He was an only child and helped his parents in the business. This photo is just so important to me because it just brings together all the generations of our family who were descendants of the Black Wall Street. I was never taught about the race massacre. My grandfather never spoke of it to me. Things that I know of him are things on tape.
Somebody fired a shot, and whoever was black or white, it's all hell cut loose, and he fought all night. Next morning, they were trying to come in on Greenwood, and the militia came in. They were rounding up blacks, figured if they'd get them rounded up, would stop the thing. But see what happened, they would allow those fellas to come in behind and open the body.
It felt like there was this bigger thread of us as Black people, and especially Black people in that time period in our family. We had to buckle up, and we had to kind of keep it pushing and do things for our own survival, even at an expense to our own mental health. The thing that shocked me about the interview with Dado is the fact that not only did he have that keep going forward attitude when he went through that at 16, but he was surprisingly resilient.
I think about the same thing, about how they marched him through the streets of Tulsa with his hands up, and how he was able to, didn't know where his parents were.
They could have been
And he ended up going, to work the next day. He ended up finding a place just to go wash dishes for the day. And he happened to run into his mother once he got off work. You keep on going, go to work, and then you finally figure out where your parents are after something like that. So like you said, that trauma that he went through, and then kept on going after that too.
Black Wall Street was here before statehood. Black Wall Street was the most prosperous place for African Americans in the world. From 1905 to 1921, it had the highest per capita home ownership in any place for African Americans in this country. This was a place where people can come from all over the country and be safe, because you didn't have to worry about state law or state statute saying what you could not do. You could do anything you could afford to do here. And black folks took advantage of that. We had so many black people come to Oklahoma. At one time, they were considering making Oklahoma a black state. And of course, white folks did not like that at all, because they, for the first time seeing African Americans with cars. This was when most folks were driving horses. Some of us had airplanes, and white folks didn't like it. We started being creative. The number of patents for African Americans were at its highest during 1885, and it capped off at 1920. That's a direct result of the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre.
Black Wall Street and the descendants were robbed twice. There was the 1921 massacre, and then the laws that dismantled the rebuilding of Black Wall Street. That's what happened to my great-grandmother's businesses.
It seems funny to visualize a big fence right here now in a building. We lived with my grandmother when I was little until I was 7 years old. She always had this nice smile.
Yes.
She always had this nice smile. Leona Corbett was my grandmother, and she was also a businesswoman on Greenwood. Her building encompassed rooms for rent, shoe repair places, eating establishments, barbershops, and also a little market, a little side shop where you could buy a little bit of everything. My grandmother worked up until the end of her life.
I was so young when Grand passed. I was only 5 when she passed, but I have this memory. I didn't understand what apartment buildings were. I didn't know that there was a rooming house above. Yes. So we'd be in the kitchen, and I would hear footsteps, and I would think there was ghosts, and I realized I was like, well, what is that? What is that? And I honestly, until you all told me later that Grand ran a rooming house, and I found out what that was, I was like, oh.
Did you think it was cool, like, as a kid, like, this is my grandma's, like, business?
I didn't think anything of it.
Because a lot of people own businesses.
Yeah, well, a lot of people own businesses, and that's where I lived. That was just, I grew up there.
So, Mama, do you remember ever going down and visiting or hanging out in the businesses that were in Grand's building?
Yes, because since I was a little girl, and there was a barber shop, I would walk by and try to flirt with the men in the barber shop.
I totally would have done that.
And I would go in and out of the stores all the time. Yes, yeah, and they knew me, and right. So they'd ask, "Did your grandmother know
you're here?"
You're here. Everybody respected her. My strong daughters came from very strong women. They don't acknowledge the Black community anyway, but they do not give the Black women enough props. Black women had to do a lot on their own.
Right.
And this morning was very sad because normally you can point to say, well, that used to be a garage. It's nothing to point to.
Right. It's not a business.
It's not a business, it's residential.
Right.
Legacy was killed.
Yes.
That's what I feel like our legacy got cut off.
Yeah, it did get cut off.
It's that legacy, that generational wealth. We weren't given that opportunity, like you said, to choose what we wanted to do with the business. That is property, that is land.
If you think about it too long, it just makes you just cry.
There's this quote by John Hope Franklin.
There are two ways which whites destroy a black community. One is by building a freeway through it. The other is by changing its zoning laws.
The cutting off of the legacy, the cutting off of intergenerational wealth, that is what the 1921 massacre did to the Black community. And still some people were resilient enough after that to rebuild. And that was destroyed by redistricting, rezoning, eminent domain, taking property from businesses. I mean, that's what happened to my great-grandmother's building. The city bought it because everything around it was being gentrified. Kind of the common theme, unfortunately, that's happened in a lot of the Black communities across the United States.
We will never have a real scale of all the businesses and all the companies of Black Wall Street when it was absolutely at its best. Black Wall Street went on for miles and miles. Now it's a little block. There are Black-owned businesses on that street, but it's been gentrified. My sister and I talk about this all the time. What if the massacre didn't happen at all? Would this have been a business that kept going in our family? Could it have been a legacy? The possibilities are absolutely endless. Would Black Wall Street had an influence on the entire nation? There's a spirit to Greenwood, there really is. And I sometimes just like hope for those spirits to see how it used to be one day. There is this one part of Greenwood that they've kept, which shows you how detrimental that massacre was. It shows the brick and how it's misshapen. It's kind of a reminder of the devastation.
So this is the basement of historic Vernon AME Church. Started being built in 1914 and completed in 1919. And in 1921, there were those who sought refuge right here in this basement, in this, in fact, very room. Terrorism and machine guns and airplanes and vigilantes and deputized members of a white mob descended upon Greenwood, killing indiscriminately women, children, and even the elderly. While hearing the bombs go off on the outside and hearing the machine guns go off and hearing people being killed and screaming and running, praying to their God for protection. What happened here in Greenwood defies what we teach our children concerning the American dream. That only if you work hard enough and you play by the rules, you will be successful in life. Well, we did that in Greenwood, and they still destroyed our property. They still destroyed our homes, our schools, and even, yes, our churches. Because in their eyes, the merits of Black people don't matter. The lives of Black people don't matter. And so I tell people that if the white mob could see Greenwood today, they would say they won. Because A, they got away with murder. To this day, almost 100 years later, we have yet to have a mayor or a police chief or a district attorney ever call for an investigation into the largest crime in this city's history.
I was walking down the alley, running down there, and ran right into a guy with a shotgun. All right there, put him up there, nigga. I put up my hands and he searched me. They searched me. It was 2 or 3 of them. And took me around the street. Caught me at Greenwood and Easton and a group of other fellas. They'd bring them in from different places. So we had to march down Greenwood to Archie. When we got to Archie, everything down Archie was burning. I passed where we lived, that building right there. See, we were coming down this street, burning down Archie, so we had to go across the Frisco track. And I saw a guy come from up in my mother's handbag, and she had one of these leopard fur coats, and pretty expensive, you know. And you could see the belt off of it hanging out of this bag.
White guy. Looting.
Oh, yeah, what could you do? Nothing. Not with all that arm around. They never did catch my dad, but didn't know where Mama was, so the next morning I ran into her downtown. They said it was safe to be on the streets, and I saw her, and I said, Mama, ran right up 3rd Main. And boy, it was some greeting.
Something more than a theater was destroyed that night. With Lula, she was never the same after the massacre. Lula's mental health declined to the point where Lula died. She had to have PTSD. She had to have the things that we have words for now, but it was just framed as like heartbreak or craziness back then. It was really death by trauma. There was this morale that was lost, and there was this trauma that replaced it that I still feel like we collectively need to work through. My family's business was forever crippled. They did rebuild the Dreamland Theater, but it was never the same. There hasn't been any real reconciliation in a really impactful, tangible way. I don't want it to be something where white people just sit idly while Black people have to dust themselves off again. Right the wrongs that either you or your family or even your community broadly did to someone. Black Wall Street was iconic. It was beautiful, it was Black. And it was a testament to how we can really shine if we really rely on each other and build each other up. That sort of spirit, of course, is still in all of us. When we're moving forward and when we're striving for success and we're striving for excellence and perseverance as Black people in North Tulsa, I think it's important to really focus in on and really refine how we think of success and how we think of community. If we rebuild all the same things, and if we still have a Dreamland 3.0, and if we have all these beautiful businesses, but if there's still a lot of poor Black people who go unnoticed or a lot of people still hurting, I think that's still not the full Black excellence. Today, a Black promised land would be something where you can be your full self as a Black person and as any type of Black person. If it's really a Black promised land, then it's more about that unconditional love than it is about some sort of output of what you're doing.
Black Tulsa. Well, I don't think it'll ever be like it was before. It just has to be melted in with. I believe that's the way it's going to have to be everywhere. Just melted in the community, black and white, just one community. It's getting better. I believe it'll. A couple hundred years from now, it will be better.